Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Together in this show where we have conversations to empower people who are fighting back against dementia. I'm your host, Mike Good. Today, I've got the privilege of having David Kramer on the show. After 2 years of extensive testing, Dave was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer at a young age of 56. Prior to his diagnosis, Dave was a physician for more than 30 years, during which time he specialized in emergency medicine and was a published author. Since his diagnosis, he's been an active advocate for the disease, and he runs the Facebook page Living Well with Alzheimer's, where his mission is to enhance the quality of life for people with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. David has been maintaining an active and social life. In fact, he recently returned from a cruise, and I think I just saw some pictures on Facebook about a trip to Disneyland. So today we're going to be talking about how David lives well with Alzheimer's. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
So thank you for being on the show. And I saw those pictures from Disneyland, and I got jealous from you. But but before we get to that, I want to. You have the site, the Facebook page, Living Well with Alzheimer's, and I'd like to have you share with us what your mission and purpose of the Facebook page is.
Sure, happy to do that. Interestingly, initially when I started the Living Well with Alzheimer's page, it was a little bit on a lark. I just wanted to learn how to make a Facebook community page, and so I just searched to see if anybody had been using that title, and it wasn't taken, and so I just went ahead and used it. And after that, I realized I had a real opportunity. For so many years, the vision of an Alzheimer's patient was one of severe disability, sitting in a wheelchair, essentially unresponsive, drooling in the corner, with no real, what I call, quality of life. And as somebody who was diagnosed at a relatively young age and had a significant change in my life as a result, I felt that I had a real opportunity to show people that Alzheimer's can look very, very different than what was commonly thought about. And thus I felt it was an opportunity to show people that life does not end with the diagnosis, and that one can continue to really enjoy his life.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I have to admit, Dave, I was telling you about how I got into the Alzheimer's community myself, and I used to have that same misconception, the person in the nursing home, and that's something we really need to change, and I'm hoping to help and go along that journey with you. I think it's so important to bring awareness that millions of people with Alzheimer's are still a part of society and may probably standing next to you in the grocery line when you don't even know it, because you can still contribute and still have active lives.
Absolutely. And I think that the more of us who are willing to stand out and get out of the closet, so to speak, and talk about the fact that we have a disease, we've got a disability. In my mind, it's no different than someone who has diabetes or coronary artery disease or something like that. It's just that it was always viewed as such an embarrassment within families, within communities, et cetera, that the stigma exists. There are still a tremendous number of people with dementia who are closeted, who, because they are afraid of losing their friends, potentially afraid of losing jobs, might not have adequate disability insurance, and thus are very, very concerned with where is their income going to come from and so forth. There are so many who are closeted who probably realize that they are having problems, but thus aren't able to face it.
Right. And that social isolation and not being able to get support is obviously probably not obviously, but it's probably one of the worst things that a person with the disease can do, is they need to do the exact opposite. and get out and go to Disneyland or go on a cruise or smell that fresh ocean air, and we need to help change that.
Yeah.
So tell me, what kind of activities are you doing? You just got back from the cruise, you went to Disneyland. You seem to be pretty active.
Yeah, we try to do a lot of things. My wife schedules a ton of stuff for us to do. We are very, very social. There are commonly thought of best practices as regards patients with dementia. And one of those is staying social. Another one is staying active, exercise, eating a healthy diet. And of course, there's different definitions of that. But the idea of staying social, maintaining contacts in society and so forth, is absolutely key, I think, to continuing to enjoy life. And I think it's very unfortunate and sad when I see people with dementia who are capable of remaining social, but instead tend to just sort of get closed in their own home, only into themselves, maybe on the internet, which is a wonderful outlet for many, many people with dementia, no question about it. But don't get out there like they should socially among others and so forth. For me, traveling for us is very important, and we just love going on cruises. We live in Florida, so Disney World, not Disneyland.
I knew I said that wrong.
is nearby, so that's a wonderful opportunity for us also. And so we take advantage of those kind of things. I'm fortunate that I'm still able to speak fairly well. People who didn't know me before things got more difficult for me might not even, be able to tell at first blush that I have dementia. But I'm lucky to be in the situation and the environment that I'm in. For others, it's music. For us, we like to go also and go to the piano bar at the club we belong to, sing along, dance along. There are a lot of outlets that people can take advantage of, and that are especially good, I think, for people with dementia.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. I'm a little jealous. I wish I had a nice piano bar near my house. I kind of like that. I'll have to try harder, and I have no excuse not to go to Disneyland, which is only about an hour or so from my house. But so let me ask you kind of a blunt question about, when you go on a cruise or you go to Disney World. For me, I'm a little introverted, so crowds and people, sometimes it's just too much for me. I would think that would be possibly too much for a person with dementia. Do you find that to?
Yeah, that's a very reasonable point and a significant concern. Crowds do have an impact on people with dementia, and I know that I have more trouble participating when I'm involved in a conversation with a handful of people even, than when I'm talking one-on-one like I'm doing with you now. The thoughts and the ideas and the responses are less fluid for people with dementia and don't come as easily. It's very interesting when I'm with my family, our kids, and maybe they're a friend or two of theirs and my wife. It's very hard for me to get a comment in edgewise, because by the time I've got what I want to say and so forth, two other people are talking about something entirely different. So it really does make a bit of a challenge, and the idea of crowds being difficult is definitely true for people with dementia. For me, having my wife with me in those kind of situations makes it vastly easier. She does the planning. She makes sure that scheduling is done, things are taken care of, that we are where we belong at the right time and so forth. And just those kind of common day-to-day assistance is, I think, crucial to my success in being able to enjoy life.
Right, right. And we were talking a little before we went live about the importance of having that team to help you live well with Alzheimer's. And so many people just don't have that support system. And through events like or conversations like we're having now, hopefully we can change that and impact their lives for the better. So, because really on your own, I'm not sure how people can even, try to live well with it. So that's great that Tiffany helps you out there. And so building up to the trips, do you get excited that you're going on trips? Are you aware that things are coming up soon? Does anxiety get built up with you on that? Or even with me, it does. So I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah. So for me, at the stage I'm in a relatively early, maybe approaching mid-stage, but relatively early stage in classic definitions of Alzheimer's disease. Awareness is not really an issue or a problem. Memory issues for sure, repeating the same questions, sometimes telling the same story time and time again. Tiffany always says sometimes I end up repeating myself, and she said, well, it's still David. It's just David again saying the same thing in the same way that he always says it, and so forth.
I see.
But, so awareness is not an issue. I don't think I'd say that I'm anxious when a cruise or other outing comes up. I will say that I tend to want to make sure that there's plenty of time. I get a little bit maybe anxious about making sure we're plenty of time, we're all ready, we belong well in advance. I don't like having to feel like things are really rushed, or all of a sudden, it's becoming more challenging for me.
Right, right. Wow, neat. Yeah. So when you do the cruise, I've never been on a cruise, but there are a lot of activities there. Were there any special activities or on the cruise, or maybe a Disney World that you want to share?
Yeah, sure. For us, we've been on a number of cruises over the years, and I've been doing that before I was diagnosed. And so for us now, really, we have the ship as our destination more than the ports of call and so forth. So we really enjoy taking advantage of the time for just the two of us on the ship and so on. We have, interestingly enough, on Holland America, there's a piano man who is incredibly popular. And so we do try to schedule our cruises when he's on board, and we really enjoy being at the piano bar when he's there. So we like the music. We stay active and walk or hike a lot. We try to make sure that we're out enjoying the outside a lot. I don't just stay in the cabin or anything like that.
Right.
I think that to be completely candid, that my time on a cruise is probably no different than anyone else's from that perspective.
Right.
Again, the key for me to enjoying whatever I'm doing is I've got the security of knowing that Tiffany is there and I'll make sure that everything happens right and so forth. I think it's a lot of weight on her shoulders, and I think a lot of people underestimate the importance, the impact, and the pressure on a family caregiver.
Right, exactly. So you answered a couple of my thoughts I was having. It sounds like for where you're at, there's really no reason to even share with anybody on this ship that you have Alzheimer's, because like you said, it's really no different for you than anyone else. So, because we hear about dementia friendly, and of course, a certain stage of the disease, the dementia friendly, and the awareness from people helping us in professional ways is important. It sounds like with the cruise or even Disneyland World, there's no reason to even mention it to anybody.
Right. So it's interesting because obviously with my Living Well with Alzheimer's page and so forth, I mean, I am, completely out of the closet as far as my dementia is concerned. So I am not at all shy about it. On the other hand, certainly on initially meeting people, I don't feel any obligation to warning them, that I have dementia. I mean, and there are a lot of people who, just simply would not know. I think unless they knew me over time.
Exactly.
It's not something I'm shy about. I'm not embarrassed at all. Again, I think that there are too many who are, and I think that the more we can remove any stigma attached to dementia and Alzheimer's, I think the better off we'll be.
Okay.
But from that perspective, I don't feel any need to announce it initially.
So I can bet that you would tell anybody with dementia to, hey, try it out. But what would you tell the care partner that's worried about, she wants to help her husband go out and maybe take a cruise or go to Disney World or do something, but she's a little uncomfortable with it. You have any thoughts or suggestions on helping that family member who might be struggling to do it?
Yeah, and I understand that, just like I understand how people, especially when they're diagnosed, can sort of feel the need to withdraw, feel some initial embarrassment, especially for those who aren't, in the medical profession, some initial embarrassment. You don't want to be looked upon as being weird or different or odd. I think that in general, it sort of self-selects who your good friends are versus those that are simply acquaintances. There are definitely people who sort of leave your life as far as social life is concerned. There's no question about it. And I will not tell you what I think of those kind of people. But you can well imagine. But I think that there are a lot of really good and understanding people who, just get that it'll take a little bit longer, maybe for you to answer, that you're not going to be as sharp as you were before, especially over time. But there are a lot of people, I think, who are understanding. But you asked about the caregiver feeling that way. And I think that in the long run, I believe it may be easier to sort of hold back, not get out there socially. But in the long run, I'm sorry, that would be in the short run. But in the long run, I feel like you're doing yourself and all people with dementia a disservice if that's your attitude. Because you're just sort of perpetuating that kind of an attitude regarding the disease.
Right. Yeah, and I would like to see, we were talking a little before the show about, I'd like to see more of the dollars spent to help caregivers learn and understand themselves, because they really have so much that they need to, the fears and the misconceptions that they also need to get behind them so that they can help their loved one live well with Alzheimer's. And I see a little of it in my community, But my fear is we keep pushing money towards a cure and not really helping those families out as much as we should be. You have any thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, I concur. And when I look at again, as a physician, I might have a little bit different perspective than others. But when I look at what goes on with regard to what I call the business of Alzheimer's, and I'm talking about things like the national organizations which are so fixated on raising money. They're so fixated on the business and the politics and the research for a cure, which I think is likely a long way off. There is not even a well-accepted pathophysiology of the disease of Alzheimer's.
Right.
There's still discussion whether you're, in the beta amyloid camp or the tau camp or the both or whatever it is that you're looking at. There's so many different views, and not having a firm grasp on the pathophysiology of the disease. I think that, saying we're going to get a cure by 2020 or even 2025 just seems so unrealistic. And there are so many millions of people right now around the world living with dementia, and all those caregivers. That's a lot of support that's necessary now, not in the future. So I really do think that a significant amount of the funds are misdirected.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I cringe when they say we're going to find a cure by 2020, whatever that date is.
Yeah.
Because to me, that downplays the complexity of the disease. It makes it seem like, oh, we can just, once we put some focus here, we're going to be able to fix this thing. And, this may be one of the most complicated diseases that, to try to fix. So to help, I'm a strong advocate for helping the families and educating them so they can live well and be successful. And like you said in the beginning, or maybe before, is, understanding that the diagnosis isn't the end of your life. You can go on and live a happy and fulfilling life. And I'd like to definitely see more money pushed in those areas.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm very fortunate, but I'll tell you that when I was diagnosed, as you mentioned, after almost 2 years of testing, it was sort of a double-edged sword. So for my wife, it was like, okay, finally we know what's going on,
right,
so we can put all that testing and everything else that we were focusing on behind us and live. So for me, it was a bit depressing, to be perfectly honest. You sort of, get a life sentence. Of course, everyone's going to die, and no one knows how long, how long I'll be in early stages, for example.
Right.
No one can tell me, that at X date, I'm going to be in mid or late stage disease. Right. So from my perspective, I'm on the 20-year plan. I plan on doing extremely well for at least 20 more years.
Amen. Cool.
But I was probably in some, having some depression when I was diagnosed. It's a very, tough thing to take initially. Probably after about a month or so, Tiffany just said, we got to cut this crap out. She said, we're wasting valuable time. Her point was, incredibly valid. Now I'm doing pretty well. Why should I be spending my time, feeling sorry for myself when this is the good time? Hell, years from now, I can feel sorry for myself if I can still be aware of it at that point. Let's not waste the time now doing that. And that's when it really turned things around for me as far as what we're doing and how we're living life and so forth.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So for living well now, Dave, what does living well to you mean?
Yeah, I'm actually sort of glad you asked that, because I recognize that I'm sort of in a fortunate situation in that we're not worried about where the meals are coming from, or things like that. So for me, it's just living life and enjoying it, making the most of every day. I think that even people who might not be as fortunate as I am still can live well with the disease. So the definition is not one of finances. It's not one of location. To me, it's just enjoying life, doing things that make the individual happy. I'm aware through a local organization that we're fortunate to have in Naples, Florida, called the Alzheimer's Support Network, which is wonderful, where every dollar goes toward the patient and the caregiver in the community.
Oh, nice.
I mean, it's just incredible organization. But fortunately, I've seen others who are not doing all they can with the disease. We have friends where the woman is the person with Alzheimer's, who was really quite a good artist, and sort of became a little bit embarrassed about what she was doing, didn't think she could continue it, and so stopped doing her painting. And that's a mistake. So her husband is just wonderful, a wonderful caregiver. And so he has encouraged and convinced her to get back into doing her art and so forth. Music is, so important, something everybody can appreciate. Personal music, whatever it is that the individual loves, probably grew up with, whatever time they were younger and so forth, as far as a music type genre. That's something that person can really be enjoying and taking advantage of, whether it's as a participant in playing an instrument or just listening. There's an incredible organization out there called Music and Memory. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. The website is musicandmemory.org. The gentleman who developed it and showed the impact of personal music, a man by the name of Dan Cohn. So I got to give him some kudos. He did incredible work. So check out the website. But there's a documentary out there that we were fortunate to have the opportunity to see at the premiere of the Fort Myers Film Festival maybe a year or two ago, something like that. Anyway, called Alive Inside.
Right.
And for anyone who hasn't seen it, you really should see it. It's incredibly moving, wonderful documentary to show what personal music can do for people with dementia.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to add something there, Dave, because you made me think about living well. I mentioned to you earlier that I think it's also about the care partner living well as well. And I had a caregiver friend that he's an artist, a painter, oil painter, I believe, and he had kind of given it up because of his wife. And I kept impressing upon him that it was so important for him that he maintained his own little hobbies and activities and socialization, because if his health, and he becomes depressed, it's not going to help his wife any. So it's very important that the caregiver also, stays, keeps as much balance in their life as possible.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. And it's one of the reasons why I think that for so many people, having an outlet for the caregiver or care partner to have an outlet for themselves often involves finding a way to have some time for himself or herself.
Right.
And funding for adult daycare for dementia patients who are more advanced and so forth is, I think, hugely important. Respite care, opportunity for caregivers to recharge their batteries and so forth. to me is, so important, and something that is too often ignored in the current competition for funding.
I agree. And I just picture those millions of family members that have been pulled into the disease without any awareness, and a total underestimation of what it takes to do, and now they're in a chaotic or unable to pull out of that. And I just really feel for them and want to find ways to help them. But Dave, tell me what's up next for Tiffany and yourself. You got anything on the schedule?
There's always something on the schedule. So I guess the next big event for us is there's a country music festival that's going to be just north of us in Punta Gorda, Florida, called Country Life. Yeah, I'm seeing some nodding from my wife, so that must be correct. Which is going to have a number of big name people like Billy Currington and Reba McEntire and Hank Williams Jr. and there's others who are going to be there. It's a 3-day music festival, and so we're going to be taking that in about a week. So we're very much looking forward to that.
Nice. So that sounds like fun. I was pretty impressed you got the name of the city right, because I couldn't say that myself. So I'm going to try to wrap up here, Dave. But before we do you have any final thoughts or you'd like to share with our viewers?
The only final thought I think that I would like to share with regard to those who do not have dementia, who might see this, is to sort of remember that we, simply have a disease, a disability. It's, not something that necessarily makes us idiots and unable to participate in life. And so just having some patience for people with dementia, I think would go a long way. Some understanding and respect us, as anyone else in the community.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, Dave. And I think there's a lot of work we can do there to help educate people that have never experienced dementia. And I know when I first started to participate in the dementia community, I had some unjust fears, and some of it was selfish. I was worried I was going to embarrass myself and say the wrong thing to the person or the care partner. And, I didn't realize that was what was going on at the time, but really they were just unjust thoughts. And I really made some good friends since I got over my little fear.
Yeah. Well, but, the worst thing is to ignore us. Honestly, that's the only thing that'll really hurt. We understand that people might say things, that might seem a little harsher, might seem as something that is just being said to make us feel better. But we just want to be involved, and there are people who have more of a problem than I do who still want to be involved, want to be loved, want to be touched, want to be, in the conversation, even if it takes time and so forth. And so don't worry so much in general about what you say. Just make sure that you say something. Right.
I agree with you. Very, very good advice. And but so I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up here. And I'd like to thank you very much, Dave, for our very, very insightful conversation here on the Together in this show, where we're going to continue to have conversations to empower people who are fighting back against dementia. And Dave is a great example of how maintaining an active life and staying social and getting out there is really one of the best things you can do to fight back against dementia. I'd like to thank our audience for joining us, And don't forget to check out Dave's Facebook group, Living Well with Alzheimer's. It's a really great place to visit. And when you got time, don't forget to visit us over at togetherinthis.com and check out our many resources. And if you can't find what you're looking for, just hit me a note with the contact form there, and I'll try to point you in the right direction. So goodbye, everybody, and have an empowered day. Thank you.
Thank you.